Hello, everyone. This is Ed Brenniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. My guest today is Cecilia Mazanke. I hope I got that right. It's close enough. And who goes by Fee. And our meeting today is the first time we've met, and it's at her initiation. And so I have decided to turn over the podcast to her. I'm going to let her begin by asking the questions. You could tell us a little bit about yourself, but then you can begin by asking the questions that you would like to ask of me, and then I'll come back in a little while and ask you some questions, and we're going to have a conversation that you can have at any point in time during any point of the day with anyone that you meet. You can just do this very same thing, and that's why I think we're going to do this. So welcome, Cecilia. I'm glad you're here and glad you took the initiative, and here we go.
Thanks so much, Ed. And just the sheer opportunity of connecting this way, connecting through LinkedIn and being able to have a conversation and also have the conversation being recorded, I think is quite a statement of what is really truly possible in building relationships, in just following your heart to make connections. And what really struck me when I reached out to you was just seeing some of the same languaging that you use around leadership, and the fact that you've had extensive leadership experience. And then, but the language and I always go by how I feel. And there's like a draw and a connection based on how I feel. And when we just started some initial dialogue together, that was what prompted this. So I'll just quickly go into a little bit about myself. I am an executive leadership coach. I have been a coach long before coaching was very popular. I actually started with a marketing company that I was working with as my official title was sales promotion manager. And there was a point in time when I knew there was something greater than inside of me, but I couldn't pinpoint what that was. And so I don't ever share with my clients to do this, but I ended up in a meeting with my boss. There was a restructure. There was another gentleman that came in the mix. So what happened to me was 12 years of being side by side with the vice president of the company, where we made decisions together and we did all these things together. All of a sudden, restructure happens. I wasn't considered for the role because I was a mom of 2 young children at the time. And there was a meeting at a TGI Fridays in July, I'll never forget. And my boss at the time said to me, Fee, I want you to make a note of this, and Tim and I will discuss it later. And at that moment, I thought, my goodness, 12 years of really being in partnership with the vice president of the company. And I felt like I was demoted in that moment. And so I took the risk. And the risk I took was to tell him, my heart is not in this anymore. I know there's something greater, but I didn't know what, Ed. I had no idea. 2 weeks after that, the opportunity for me to become a certified coach, I had hired a coach way back when, I think it was 1998 or 7. I can't remember the year. Anyway, so she said to me, hey, Fee, I don't know if you understand this, but I certify coaches. And I was like, okay, let me in on that, because I had no idea what I was going to do. And I had 2 young children. My husband was starting a business at the time. And so that prompted me to go all in on a certification program, which then led me to 2 other certification programs in coaching. And it brought my role here, and the reason why I feel like I've been put on the planet, it brought it completely forward. So I have that really uncomfortable meeting and that very sad feeling of what happened at the TGI Fridays back in July of whatever 1997 or 8, I think it was. To really, I owe it to that experience, which put me here. And so that's my background. And because I absolutely love, Ed, working with people in a leadership capacity, and I love to show and demonstrate to leaders how they are so empowered and they have the answers within themselves always, and how they can lead and guide their teams from a space of love and from
Mm.
their heart space. And that's what I've been doing and getting results, and not just getting results, but quantum results. You know, somebody had a first $1 million business that they've ever had before, a young man that I coached last year. I'm currently involved with some executives from a company in Utah whereby they are making a gigantic quantum leap. It could be, we don't know how the numbers are going to shake out, but an 8 million to a $50 million growth and then some. There's been a lot of really fun examples, not just of sales growth, but really what's more impactful to me is greater peace of mind, and greater understanding of how all of what we require to be leaders here on this planet is within our hearts and within our minds, and we have access to all of that. So there was something about your language that kind of said, I need to connect with Ed. And so, with that being said, Ed, what I want to ask you is if you can give me some background about your leadership life and what has led you to here, this space, the Eddie podcast, and what your mission is here to reach out to people on the Eddie podcast, and why we're here together today.
Well, I would say the first thing that I connect with in what you're saying is that we are always in transition, and
Mm.
and that my experience of transition is ongoing and has been true since probably I was 11,
Mm.
and going through different phases of my life and different and the leadership thing was never really clear until um, the mid 80s, and I began my career as a minister,
Mhm.
Presbyterian minister, and my first call was to a large church in Atlanta downtown, and my ministry was to the people of the urban community, and
Mm.
street people, poor families, alcoholics, drug addicts, sex workers, people from rural Georgia who came to Atlanta looking for work but didn't find it, and they were in desperate straits. All these people, plus the business community of the part of downtown that I was in, and I was asked to come on the board of this business association and as the clergy representative. And I was in a very healthy church. We're going through a leadership change at the time, and I was like the fifth or sixth minister on the staff, so it was a large staff, and so I got asked to be the clergy rep on this business association board, and it turned out to be much bigger than a business associate. It was really a community board of businesses, small, large, multinational, arts associations, education institutions, local citizenry, retired people. Was a real mix of about 45 people, and I discovered a board that was functioning as a whole, and there was no single person that was dominant. It was a very open, collaborative
Mm.
group. And I thought, oh my, so this is what leadership is about. Because all that I had seen up to that point was the traditional hierarchical structure, where you have a person at the top and they basically delegate responsibility and accountability downward. And there's not much accountability upwards. There's no mutual accountability. So so immediately I started looking for information, and I had met a couple of guys who were Harvard Business School grads, and they did a lot of consulting with Coca-Cola, and they had put together a program, of leadership development program, and so I took their program, and it was really fantastic because it focused on the leadership of the individual, and as I kind of incorporated that into my life, still at this church, uh, I began to read corporate leadership books, and CEO biographies and stuff like that. And I began to realize that I disagreed with almost everything I was reading. I left that church, went to another church, realized that I didn't really belong in the traditional parish ministry because I was a change agent. I wanted to create change. So I ended up at a college for 7 years. And I had one of those moments like you, where my supervisor, the president, basically said, "You are being too presidential in your behavior here." And I said, well, didn't think I was just doing my job. And so I knew it was time to leave. And so we decided we would move to North Carolina and be close to our families. And I was going to start a consulting practice, start a business, but start a consulting practice, having never run a business or been a consultant. But I did know how to talk to people. And so I started talking to people. And I would talk to people about what they felt like were the problems of their organizations. And my oldest son, who was 10 at the time, was asked, "Well, so what does your father do?" And he says, "Dad talks people into having problems and offers to fix them."
From the wisdom of the babes, right?
And so that became sort of the theme for the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of that, I began to have relationships with organizations across a very broad spectrum, from large corporate entities to small mom and pop local businesses. And what I began to see what I call patterns of behavior. And those patterns were lack of clarity about identity and purpose and values, a lack of respectful, trustworthy relationships, mm-hmm. and then a real lack of ability to actually see how the structure of their organizations affected the people that work for them and affected their customers or clients or patients. So those three things, those three patterns of behavior came together, and I created a leadership model called the Circle of Impact. And the Circle of Impact is based on three dimensions of ideas, relationships, and structure, with impact being the focal point of it. And so, since that developed, over 20 years ago, that's been kind of the core of my ideology that I present to people, and use it as a tool for conversation. And so if someone asks me, so if someone comes to me and says, "Well, this is our problem," I'll ask them, "So what kind of problem is it? Is it a clarity problem, lack of clarity of your ideas? Is it a relationship problem, or is it a structural problem?" And what I would say to them is, whichever one it is, the other two dimensions will be the resources we use to fix it. And that was, I practiced that model of problem solving and strategic development and that sort of thing for 15 years. And out of that then came my book, Circle of Impact, which was published in 2018, 5 years ago.
Wonderful. Wow. What a story, and what a path that you followed. And it seems to be the commonality between the two of us is that, there was that pivotal moment of realization or self-awareness that said, "Hey, it's time for me to move, and there's something greater than here." And then that type of experience just naturally evolved. So if I were to ask you, Ed, the Circle of Impact, so the book was published in 2018, and the Circle of Impact is, your passion. There it is. That's the passion. Um, what is it that you want your clients to feel and experience based on your wisdom of the circle of impact?
Actually, the circle of impact is just a tool. It's
Mhm.
not my passion. My passion is people taking personal initiative to
Mm,
impact. And I want people to feel freedom. I want people to feel like there's something possible here. I want them to feel that they can break out of whatever constraints that they have felt held them back. And and I think, and maybe your experience is similar, that everything I know I've learned the hard way.
mm,
So a decade ago, I went through 3 losses. My consulting practice dried up after the recession. I began to run a nonprofit, and I got fired from that after 18 months. I had expectations for the board that they didn't agree with. Like, you need to give us money, and you need to give us contacts for people to raise money. They didn't want to do that. And then my marriage of 30 years ended. So I call that the three losses. And
mm,
and when I went through that, I'd spent 2 years kind of working through to the point of the divorce
mm,
as a pastor of a church, and
mhm.
and and I realized once again that you can have great relationships with people, but if they're not interested in change, they're not free to change. That they're not free to transition, not free to say I want to be different, and it's really hard to lead them very far. And so I ended up saying, okay, I'm starting over, and I ended up moving from North Carolina to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where I spent almost 6 years. And then during the pandemic, I moved back here. So I think it's the passion is for people, and my goal, my which is different than my purpose. My goal is to see 1% of the world's population take personal initiative to create impact in their local communities. And the typical question that comes with that is, well, how are you going to do that? I said, I don't know. I'm going to do it one day at a time. And I'm going to talk to people, and they're going to talk to people, and they're going to influence people. They're going to impact people. They're going to impact their organizations. They're going to impact their communities. And that's kind of the thing that drives me, is to see world change in the world, but not at the big at the big place, but rather in all these little micro contexts of families and businesses and communities and schools and that sort of thing.
What a really profound purpose that you have. And I'm sure I'm sure when you wake up each day with that in mind, with having this purpose of the 1% rule, of having people take initiative and then lead through change. um that's got to be fulfilling. I'm sure very challenging, because you have no idea where or how. But what I underneath that, I would say that there's a great trust in knowing that the guidance of all of that is what you're stepping into each and every day. Would that be true?
Yeah, that would
Mm-hmm.
be true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
I I don't really. I mean, I'm careful. I watch. I watch all the vulnerabilities are, but at the same time, I'm not afraid. I'm just gonna I'm gonna address what's in front of me in the best possible way.
Mm-hmm. And so, do you have an intention each morning that you put forth for that, or do you just kind of allow it to happen? I'm curious, like
I have
the how behind it.
I have two intentions um, that don't begin when I wake up. They exist with me. One is I'm going to write every day, and I will write every day for the rest of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to engage with people. So when you reached out to me and asked to have a conversation, I was excited because you're the only one today that is I have scheduled. And so now my day is complete because I get to talk to someone, and you know, that sounds a little bit superficial, but it's not. It really is. I get to go deep with people, and you know, without making it feel awkward and strange, or as if there's some kind of obligation that comes from that. It's not. It really is just, let's celebrate who you are. And what is it? What's interesting? What is it? What is interesting to you? I mean, let me just ask that of you. So what, all of this stuff that you've been doing, which is so similar to me,
Mhm.
and in other ways it's very different. So what is it that, let me just re-ask the same question that you did. So when you get up in the morning, what is it that is driving you? What is it that is really important to you and that you will see yourself doing for the rest of your life?
Well, I love that question and that position. And I feel a great deal of passion around it because I am a very introspective person. And knowing that there is that guidance, and that guidance exists within me, is something that I want everyone to know, that they have the guidance within themselves. Oftentimes that guidance is covered up by what I call roadblocks. And those roadblocks are always fear based. And because I know we are not a fearful people, but fear is something that we must experience here to overcome, I want people to know that when they just simply allow themselves to feel fear, either in a leadership capacity or in their own life, and in their own experience of life here in a relationship or with themselves. And most people I have found have a fear of self-worth. Like they're paralyzed by fear of self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I work on daily. It's not I've overcome, I work on it daily. And I want everyone to know and understand that within themselves is fear is fear is not any, it does not have strength over us unless we give it the power or strength. And love is definitely the biggest guiding force that we have. And in 1999, when I went through one of my coaching certifications, my coach asked me, you know, what is your mission here, Fee? What do you want here? And it was a very simple response. I wrote it in my journal and I'll never forget it. And then it still drives me today. And that is to really love and accept myself so that I can uh, allow other people to be aware of that love within themselves. And in a leadership format, when leaders guide people with their hearts, so many amazing, miraculous things happen as a result of heart-based leadership. And I'll tell you, Ed, I feel like, you know, I've had many life transitions and been knocked to my knees. I understand what you're saying about having like the big three losses in your life. And about 8 years ago, my 18-year-old daughter was really struggling because I was caring for my mother and she was living with us and she had dementia. And it was a very difficult time. It was her senior year in high school. She had dementia. My mom had dementia, and my daughter was watching that, really not knowing how to navigate those waters at all. And because my focus had been on my mom, and what was going on with her and making decisions on behalf of her, my daughter ended up in a relationship with this young man. And it was a very abusive narcissistic relationship that she had. And she went away to college shortly, just a few months after my mom had passed. And she ended up getting pregnant in college. And she ended up keeping the baby, moving. She moved back home and had the baby. And the track that we had for the past now 7 years, my granddaughter is 7 years old now, um, really was another turning point for me. And I will tell you, Ed, that led me to a deep understanding and a deep faith of knowing that what I was seeing and witnessing in the experience of what was very difficult abuse, um, and also was corruption in the court system. That I learned a lot. I learned a lot in the last 8 years. I've learned so much. And this amazing little child in the form of a now 7-year-old really has been my greatest teacher. But what this translates to from a leadership perspective is that I learned that no matter what I was seeing and experiencing with my human eyes, what I could do was connect to a vision. I call it the frequency of success, of knowing and seeing that there can be a different outcome.
Hmm.
And that different outcome came as a result of not connecting to the conditions, circumstances, and problems, but having so much faith and so much trust in knowing that, in the simplest terms, God had my back. That's probably the simplest way I can describe it.
So in that
Mhm.
sense, then, by grasping that vision, that
Mhm.
frequency
Mhm.
vision,
Mhm.
um, does it actually make all the hard stuff, the traumatic stuff, the challenging stuff more realistic and therefore more manageable? And it's not as overwhelmingly emotional as it, which then takes on such a huge scope to our lives that we don't know how to manage that. And so then we pull inside and we become isolated and we become very interior. Instead, we say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. I I'm not going to let this thing overwhelm me. I think you used the word overwhelm on your LinkedIn thing. It's about you help people not be overwhelmed. Is that right?
Maybe I can't remember the exact language on it, only because I ask for the language um, to really be in a space of really supporting people to knowing themselves in the most loving space. So um, that's so. Here's what I learned, Ed. Here's what this experience really taught me was, and is, it's still, we're still in the midst of all of it. But I can tell you the very happy ending around this is upon us, and I can see light at the end of the tunnel right now.
Good.
And fear was driving me because I was so deeply afraid of what we were forced to do at the hands of the court, was to give her up, on certain for visitation on certain days and certain amounts of time. And I mean, it was very evident that this young child, very like a baby, was deeply knowing. She had a connection to her knowing that was saying, this isn't right, and why is it that I have to go? And um as I said, there were so many lessons here, and this is all, I haven't started the book yet, but it's in me. That's kind of the next chapter for me, is to really write this story to allow people to know, no matter what adversity they face, that there is a way out. So here's what I learned. I walked this path of a private investigator, a different lawyers, therapists, police. I mean, going to the police and showing videos of, drug use and um, exposure to drug dealing for this infant. Like there were many things that, many levels of evidence, therapists that said that this young child should not be um, in this place where she is. She's in danger from doing that, and a court system that, a guardian ad litem, which is a GAL in the family court system, that said, oh no, she's fine. And the interesting thing is he never had an interview with the therapist. And I have 5 emails that I sent him saying, please come and see, what happens, like on a Friday before she leaves and on a Sunday when she comes home. And he never did that. And so there were things that I saw and fear that came up that was really overwhelming to me. I felt, several years ago in 2018, I felt like I was having a heart attack. And I, at the time, what was I, 52 or 3? So I knew that wasn't going to be an option for me to continue down that path of fear. And I felt it. It was very, it was very visceral in my body, and I knew where I held it. And so because of that really difficult experience for me, I started to open up to learning a different way. I actually had a coach, and she basically said, hey, Fee, when you're feeling that grip of fear inside your body, breathe and relax and go to gratitude, because gratitude is in direct alignment with abundance. And abundance is not just financial abundance. We're talking abundance of love and peace and connection, to those things. So I started to learn how to shift the feeling of fear within my body in order to connect to what I would love. The biggest question that she asked was, what would you love? And like you, Ed, it's funny that you say, I want people to feel freedom. I said, I want freedom, freedom for my family, freedom for my granddaughter, freedom for my daughter. That was my kind of daily intention, if you will, to say, I desire freedom.
Yeah.
So when I didn't see freedom, I just kept saying, I'm trusting in freedom. I'm trusting that this freedom will be here, that it is here, that it's here. And that the more I take the action steps of being in alignment with freedom, that's going to happen. And so I can tell you, I can't go into the details as of yet, but I can tell you that I see the light, and I see freedom's possibility here. And I started really deepening. I've had some great success with clients, but I started really deepening with them their own connection to fear and how they feel it in their bodies, and how to guide them in letting that go, to connect to the vision, the very vision that I believe is not just what they want, but it's a purpose and a greater mission here to serve humanity in a better way. And I've seen people do it. I've seen one guy in London, one of my clients a few years back said, these are his words, not mine. He said, my team thinks that I'm an asshole, and I don't want to be an asshole to my team anymore. That's what he told me.
Wow, beautiful.
And so I started to share with him how to connect to his team in a way that was deep and meaningful and inspired for their vision, and how their vision connects to his vision and the overall vision of this is massive, massive organization. And then he became one of the most revered leaders in that organization, and people complimented him on how caring. It wasn't that he was a jerk. It was that he just forgot or wasn't given the tools to help him to lead from a place of love. That's what happened, Ed. Yeah.
You know, there's several things to say. One is I feel for you and your family, your daughter and your granddaughter in particular. You know, it's not easy to go through these hard family life challenges. But you're not alone in that. There are lots and lots of people who go through this. And so your story is going to touch someone. And your story of overcoming the fear is going to be beneficial to a lot of people. You know, and I said I don't have any fear. That's not true. I do have fear. I just don't allow it to dictate how I behave. I mean, I was feeling a sense of fear of being a fraud this morning. You know, that was just this came to my mind as I was walking through the house. You know, it's gosh, am I just trying to present myself in a way that people will not see the fraud that I am? You know, it's that kind of thing. I think the second thing, and it's really hard for people who are in the midst of the crisis like you've gone through to see it, but it is a gift. If you can see it as a gift, then you can change yourself and you can find some transformation, and then you can begin to see in other people what you've experienced. And in doing so, you can, I think, be an agent of healing. I like to use that word. It's a healing. There's a healing aspect to all trauma, and we need to be healed. But we become healers when our trauma becomes something where we have found some healing. So, and your granddaughter is going to be a tremendous individual in the future because of what she's gone through and your attentiveness to her. And yeah, I congratulate you on that. So what is it that you see as kind of the next transition for you in this regard?
Well, I feel that there is responsibility in knowing, as you said, what good is here, what good can come from all of this, and the list of what good that came from all of this is immense. And the life of a child who has blessed our family beyond a love and an upliftment, this child that has been born under these adverse circumstances has brought a love to our family and a connection to our family it's hard to describe it, but people that see us as a family can feel it. You know, they can feel that. And I feel like that love is really the catalyst to all things. And you know, again, loving myself and accepting myself and trusting myself is where all this has led. And then sharing with other people that this is possible within you is really important to me. So I would love to see in this transition, by sharing my story, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I there's details in the story that I think people would not even believe happened. And I soon that those details are going to come out. And I feel like the underlying intention for me is about sharing and being vulnerable about, hey, this is what happened. And here is how you can connect not only within yourself, but within, a community of people, like our connection here. It's real. It's not, it's a real connection. And thank you for saying yes to me. And I'm going to say, when you asked me about being on this podcast, I said yes to that. And when we say yes to a connection that is much, it's not just building a business or bringing forth, our knowledge. It's about connecting to in a way that is meaningful for people to show and to demonstrate what is possible in connecting with others that you don't even know, but with the correct intention together, many things can be possible. Do I know what's possible? Absolutely not. But do I feel it and am I guided by it when I said yes, let's connect, and then yes, let's be together on this podcast, it was like, okay, that's a no-brainer. And I feel like there's not an accident there, that we all are meant to have connections like this. And where it goes, I don't know, but I'm willing to be vulnerable, to share a way, and to share with leaders, because I feel like leaders are influencers. And if leaders can influence from a place of love and heartfelt connection, we can change the world. Just like you're saying, you're 1% in the community. How can I have spread this initiative and share with people taking the initiative in the communities? I feel exactly the same way, Ed, in that when I work with leaders, they're not just working with themselves, which is the first point of change. To be a change agent as a leader, we must first start within. I can always know what what's going on within the leader when I just ask about the team. I always say, tell me about your team, because the speed of the team is always equal to the speed of the leader. And so then I know I can get a really easy gauge on a leader's where a leader can go and has possibility to go there.
Yeah.
And from there, having the courage to make connections in this way, to really understand that there are really great people in the world, that rather than stay in isolation, which is what fear wants us to do, but rather bring forward what is here, that those things are all possible. And that possibility is what is going to make a difference in the world. And if doing it one day at a time, and one person at a time, or one team at a time, I've seen transformation with teams as well. And I've seen connections with teams where people like shed their masks of fear and are able to be vulnerable about what you're saying, and the imposter syndrome as it's known these days. Everybody has that. Everybody, myself included. CEOs especially have it. Like, CEOs are the biggest ones that suffer from imposter syndrome, because they have thoughts like that. Thoughts like, what am I doing? Is this a facade here? And I'm here to say those thoughts are normal, but they're not true.
Right.
And I want people to know the truth within themselves, which is there is an opportunity to connect to the deepest part of love within each person's heart and soul, and really lead from that space.
So as we come to the conclusion of the episode, I'm going to toss the ball back to you and let you ask me one last question that you want to ask, and then we'll just finish it at that point. So anything you want to?
Absolutely. I can ask questions all day, but here's my question to you, Ed. I mean, I have great admiration for what is this 1% mission. How do you see the world? How do you imagine the world once this 1% legacy is out in the world? What change do you see in the world when this is accomplished?
I think people will see it at the local level. They'll see it in their own community. They
Mm.
won't, they won't, won't necessarily see it on the evening news. It won't necessarily be on, these big podcasts, because that's not the point. The point is to make a difference where you live. And
Mhm.
and a lot of people, I mean, I learned early on that a lot of people don't like the thought of being considered a leader. They don't like that. They don't like the target on their back. They don't like to feel that responsibility. And so I said, but you like taking initiative to make a difference in people's lives. Oh yeah, yeah, I can do that. Well, that's what's leaders. That's what leadership is. You're taking initiative. You're making a difference. That's all you have to do. And if you don't know what to do, if you don't know how to start that, just walk out your front door, look and see where the oldest person in your neighborhood is. Go over and knock on his or her door and say, "Can we have a 15-minute conversation? Let's just talk for 10 minutes." That's a place to start. If you don't know, just go find someone to talk to. So, I have friends who, when this idea of the 1% came about, they said, "Why are you shooting so low?" and they want me to 10x my goal. I said, "Well, I will consider that, but I think 1% is a nice round number." And we're talking. I think 1% is 800 million people. I think that's what that is.
Mhm.
That's a lot of people.
Mhm.
And so, and if we spread it out across the world, I think that's, and the thing is, here's the thing. I don't want to be known as the person who created all that. I'm glad to be the initiator. I want all those people to be recognized in their local communities. And so I don't think this is a global movement that takes place at the local level. And therefore, I want to be known not as by some label, the 1% initiator or something. I don't want that, because that's such a marginalization of what I'm doing. What I want to be known is, he helped me believe that I could do something. And and sometimes that's really difficult, because sometimes you have to say to these people who you have become very close to, that you're asking something which is impossible to give and is not healthy for you to receive. And you're going to have to make changes if you're going to survive the situation that your previous decisions have placed you in. And I have that conversation with people all over the world. So I don't really know where all this goes. I'm just doing what I do. So when I started the Substack a year ago, January, I started with 360 people off of my MailChimp newsletter list.
Mhm.
And almost immediately 35 checked out. So down to 335. And as of today, I'm somewhere in the around 686. So I've had, over, 100% in growth and now almost a year and a half, which to me is stunning. I mean, I've never experienced this. And then when you look at the numbers, you look at the subscriber numbers, the largest over the whole course of that period of time, the largest national group of subscribers are people in India.
Wow.
What does that
Wow.
mean? What does that
Mm.
mean? I don't know what
Yeah.
that means, but it does. But on the one hand, if 1% of the world's population is to be moved to take personal initiative, India's got to be a major player in that.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking about actually what I'm thinking about doing is buying back the rights to my Circle of Impact book, and then figuring out some way to publish it in India. So it's available across India, not just in one place. And we're doing that in Africa now, and the book is available in China now, And so that's one way of doing it. You know, you're
Mm.
he's seeding the ground. But at the end of the day, this is what I'd rather do, that and sit and write. And this is what I'd rather do. And and I guess this is the last thing I want to say. So I had a conversation yesterday with a friend who I haven't had a conversation with in 20 years, but we knew each other in college 50 years ago. And I was catching him up on the last 20 years, which has been a dramatic series of transitions. And you know, it was really great to hear him and to talk with him and to get a validation that the person that he knew 50 years ago is the same person that he saw today. And so what does that mean? I don't really know, but it does mean that I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to. I may have retired as a minister, but I haven't retired as a person, and I will continue to plug away and to have more conversations. And so I say to you, if you need help in doing this book, I'm glad to help you. And when you reach the point where you want to talk about it, then you can come back on here and we can talk about it. And because I know that what's important in the publication of a book is building an audience that is anticipating, that can't wait for the book to appear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I would like for you. And so it's, I used to say that if I've had a meal with someone, we're friends for life. And now I'm saying if I had a podcast with someone, we're friends for life. So that's kind of it.
Thank you. What a tremendous way to make the ask, right? Like the ask of connection, and they ask for you to say, hey, are you willing to share on the podcast? And we both said yes. So here's to both of us saying yes to that. And yes, I'll be back. And I do feel like there is some great anticipation in the writing of what the story is about and how it can help people that are experiencing any kind of adversity. It's not just about um, child custody at all, because it can be translated into anything, because I believe these principles are all innate principles that we all share. And I want people to know and understand how best to use them. So go out and have those conversations in your community. That's the takeaway from the 1% piece of it, is go talk to somebody, have the conversation to make a difference in the community.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you, Fee, for being on here. And I look forward to talking with you some more. And thank you, everybody, for watching, listening. Please subscribe and hit the like button. But even more so, please leave a comment or a question so that we can be in conversation with you. And I greatly appreciate that. Until next time, thank you for watching the Eddie Network podcast, and see you later. Bye-bye.